Yeehaw! Caroline Feraday. Good day.
Yeehaw to you.
Oh, look
I don't
at you.
know if saying yeehaw where you're wearing, like, that waistcoat, it's a bit of a juxtaposition.
Is it? Well, I mean, you've got Christmas trees on. Is mine a bit underplayed? I'm feeling nervous.
Oh, you are never knowingly underdressed, are you?
well, I try not to be. No. How's everything over there? Are you gearing up for the festive season?
There.
What?
Say, what?
Are you gearing up for the festive season?
No, trying not to.
Why?
But failing miserably. You know, do my best.
And is the weather lovely still?
Well, yeah, I mean, we get a winter. It's been chilly. The frost warning came on in my car one morning, steady.
Right. That's it, is it? Well,
yeah,
if it's any consolation, it's been absolutely freezing and it's dark when I get up. Shall we talk about what's going on in the United States? This is Time Magazine's Person of the Year.
Yes. It's a big surprise who they chose. There he is.
Donald Trump.
Good.
President-elect Donald
Oh, hang on
Trump.
a minute. Harrison says good.
Yeah. I think someone who's won such a huge mandate to unite the country now, I think it's good that he's been recognised for it, yeah.
That's quite a picture, isn't it, Harrison?
He looks like a winner there, doesn't he?
I'm not sure that he's run on a mandate to unite the country.
well, I mean, it couldn't be any more divided, so...
Oh, Caroline, fight back.
We'll see. We'll see whether it could be.
Well, so that's a really good point, actually, just in terms of that. He's there for the second time. I believe he won the honour after winning the presidential election in 2016. I suppose... was it inevitable he had to be the person, the Time Magazine Person of the Year?
Yeah, listen, it's not necessarily about prestige. It's certainly about somebody who is the most talked about, and there is, you know, no doubt that he is the most talked about, has had this extraordinary comeback from going from being a, you know, 34 counts of fraud in a New York courtroom to being the next president of the United States is a fairly extraordinary comeback and a fairly extraordinary moment in history. I think that people are going to look back. And also, look, Time Magazine aren't daft, are they?
No.
They want to sell copies of their magazine. And that is what Donald Trump does extraordinarily well. He is somebody that people are just so endlessly curious about whether they like him or not. So so he did an interview with them. It's interesting you're saying about the dark mornings, because one of the things he's come out with in the last couple of days is that he wants to scrap daylight savings.
I heard that this morning. What are the thoughts of the American public on that?
Well, some people are well up for it. Oh, my earring just fell out. What a glamorous moment that is. I'll pop it back. That's how excited we all are. I think, isn't it one of those things they tried before?
Yes.
And actually it wasn't that successful. But where we have these dark evenings, you're coming home now, it's dark at 5 o'clock here, you know, whereas in the summer it's dark much later.
It's dark about 3:30 here.
I know, that's it, isn't it? And you get, like, I've got that experience of it being dark so much earlier. And wanting that daylight, and the schools start earlier here, so I'm doing the school run at 10, you know, she's dropped off at 10 to 8 in the morning. So that would be dark if they shift it the way they're going to, and I'm not sure that kids who are finding their own way to school should be doing that.
And how much of this is a throwaway line from Trump? It certainly made the news headlines here this morning.
A lot of this is, so much of what he says is people-pleasing, isn't it? And then he sort of backtracks a little bit and says, well, I said that. So he sort of makes up policy on the spot. That's what he does. That's what he's always done. And we'll see how much of it becomes reality.
I mean, it's quite eye-catching. I haven't heard it recently. I've heard it before, but I haven't heard it recently. I mean, it's interesting. The Times editor-in-chief, Sam Jacobs, credited Trump with marshalling a comeback of historic proportions. I think that is fair to say.
Absolutely,
I don't think I would have seen Trump again in the White House and driving a once-in-a-generation political realignment. There is a real sense, not just in the United States, but around the world, that there is a realignment going on across several countries. We were talking earlier, actually, about France and Germany in absolute desperate straits at the moment. And is there a sense in the United States of a realignment? Is there, I suppose it depends who you talk to, is there a sense of optimism? Is there a sense of actually America will be great again?
I think that there's a huge divide in that, and there definitely is a sense of optimism amongst those who support Trump and support him as the next president of the United States. And there is a huge sense of doom about people who don't want to go down that road of chaos again. And that is the divide that's going on. But yeah, I think that people who have very right, have had a very hard time over the last few years. The price of food has gone up, the price of where you're going to live, rents have gone up, and it's been very, very tough for people. And so I think that one wants something to believe in, that it's going to get better and that somebody is able to pull that off. Whether that will be Donald Trump or not will remain to be seen, but that's certainly what he's promised people and what he promises to deliver. He promises, lower taxes, things are going to be cheaper, days are going to be sunnier,
I mean, in some ways, at least he has a honeymoon period in some ways, which is more than can be said for what's going on over here.
Yeah, you get this little strange period, don't you, before they hand over power. It's not quite as abrupt as you lose the election and
you're
pack
out
up your suitcase and off you go. But it does mean we have this little weird period where the current president, Joe Biden, you're kind of like, well, what's he supposed to be doing in the meantime? It's supposed to all be like this sort of handover period, but it's not, necessarily that.
Caroline Feraday, very excited for Christmas, wearing her Christmas trees on her jumper there. Now, let's talk about Biden, because you're right, he's kind of just been sidelined. I saw his wife in France, obviously, but he's nowhere to be seen, but he's been busy pardoning people.
Yeah, so I guess it must start with the Christmas turkeys at Thanksgiving when they pardon those, and then he pardoned his son of anything, of everything. That was a vastly unpopular move with the American people in a bipartisan way, and then he has had the single busiest day of clemency for any US president in history. He pardoned 39 Americans, but he issued clemency to 1,500 who were people who actually were serving their sentences at home, because during COVID, they moved a lot of people out of prisons because it was so rife in the prisons. So they decided that sort of non-violent offenders could serve out their sentences.
Well, hang on a minute. What message does this send out, though? Because if you are serving your sentence for multi-million-dollar fraud scheme at home, and then the president rocks up and says, "Oh, by the way, you're free," what message is that?
Yeah, I've got to be honest. I think it's one of the weirdest powers that the American president has got, but they all do it for various reasons, and they're already talking about when President Trump comes in, whether he will issue pardons to people who are serving for crimes committed on January the 6th. So it is this kind of bizarre power that the president of the United States has to pardon people. It's the idea, or they would say that it's the idea that people who have turned their lives around, that have set a good example, get this moment of clemency. So you don't, the ones who've the sort of 1,500, they still remain with it on their record. It's just they don't serve their sentence anymore, and the argument is that these are these sort of non-violent. I mean, you did have quite similar, didn't you, with your new Labour government, where yes. a lot of people departed prison.
Well, that's right. Yes, Shabana Mahmood decided that why stay in prison when you can go home?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, of course, but she is saying that's because we don't have enough prison places. Oh, you're like this, by the way. Angela Rayner is now deciding to build new prisons, even on Greenbelt land. Now, that's going to play well electorally, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
I've got a lot of thoughts about what is the purpose of Greenbelt land if it's suddenly not Greenbelt anymore.
Well, indeed. Of course, it was there designed to stop urban spread originally. And that's quite interesting. I mean, I just wonder about this idea of giving clemency. Does it hark back to a historical age where I suppose the president was the supreme being, that you had all of these, I suppose, cowboy courts, if you like, back in the day, and the president then makes that final decision?
Yeah, and I think it is just one of those little things they do in this, particularly in this outgoing period. He's done it a little bit early because he's not quite going out yet. But he's obviously like, look, I'm just going to get this done, and then we can kick about and relax for the holidays.
Yeah, well, quite. And then let's move on, shall we, and talk about this fire that has been raging.
Yeah, you were asking about the weather. So earlier this week, we had the Santa Ana winds that when they happen, they bring a lot of chaos in, particularly this time of year when it's very dry and been warm, and the ground is very dry. And this fire, Franklin Fire, has burned through Malibu. A lot of people evacuated from their homes, some of them quite notable, including the very lovely Dick Van Dyke, who turned 99 this week. God bless him. Anyway, he was among those who were evacuated. Some people lost their homes. You know, the actor Rainn Wilson, he's in The American Office. I saw him posting on his Instagram that quite a lot of his house had been burned. It's one of those ones where it's actually at 4. It's still burning down the road. It's about contained at about 30%.
Right.
And it's about 4,000 acres. So it's actually not as big as some of them, but it happens to be threatening Malibu, where, of course, you've got all of these celebrity homes. It came very near Pepperdine University. And then the Pacific Coast Highway, which, of course, runs right through Malibu there, right along the coast, that's been closed for days. So it's been a little bit chaotic. But it is, it's still burning.
Wow. And you're right, of course, I remember it vividly, the Santa Ana winds, of course, bringing with it, I suppose, it brings in just hot air, and it becomes tinderbox conditions.
Yeah, there's a whole thing about the Santa Ana winds when you live here. They're supposed to make people go a bit loopy and all sorts. But anyway, it kind of funnels in, particularly sort of where Malibu is, which is why you get those fires there, is it kind of funnels in, and then kind of you get these very, very fast gusts of wind. So if you get some sort of spark in those winds, you know, those flames and the embers can travel miles. I mean, last month we had a fire in Ventura County where over 100 people lost their homes. There's been about 12 to 14 homes at the moment been lost in this one. So comparatively, the sort of damage is a bit less, but obviously probably quite bigger houses.
Well, and devastating for those people who are affected.
Very.
Caroline, it's always such a pleasure to talk to you. Get cracking with your Christmas shopping. Caroline Feraday there, and that was today's Transatlantic Talk.
Transatlantic Talk with Caroline Feraday.